When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of The Meta Show. I'm Brisker Ball. Today is April the 17th. I am a fully vaccinated Brisker Ball, which is why we were not on last week.
I am a partially vaccinated Mitten. We'll have to wait another couple of weeks till I get the second one. But yes, finally. Holy shit, finally. Yes.
We're getting close to
Almost
finally
there.
being out of this nonsense.
Yes. Maybe. Potentially. We'll see, but it's nice to have. I'm glad that we got that done, and presumably I will not be available on the week of getting the second shot because I will potentially, I don't want to be like, hey, I'm having a fever on live TV because it's scheduled for a Saturday. So when I get the second shot, there might be one coming up here where I am absent, and I'm sure it will be fine. But yeah, that's we skipped last week. Was that just a week ago?
It was a week ago. It feels a lot longer, doesn't it?
It really
feels
does.
Like a long time.
It does. It feels like it's been ages. All right. Well, we got shit to do. So we have a couple of guests from CCP, one of whom is only recently with CCP, that being former Elise Randolph, now CCP Swift, and we have CCP Rattati. So we are going to be asking a lot of questions and herfing very few blurfs because we don't have guests like this on the show very often. And when we do, you can listen to me bloviate whenever you want. You can listen to Brisk bloviate whenever you want. So we're going to try to just hit these guys with questions, let them talk, see what they say, and go from there. So let's stop fucking around. Where are we going, Brisk? All right.
So first thing, I'm going to hop on my soapbox very briefly. Going to tell you guys, just give you all a heads up. So it's CCP, it's CSM season now. CCP just put out the dev blog. I'll pull it up here for you guys so you can see it. A couple of days ago. So if anybody is interested in running for the CSM, here's all the information you need to know. It's all on the website. Right now, the submission period is going to start in 2 weeks. Once that's done, they'll process applications. Then they will do the live candidate announcement. The campaign period runs for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then we go into the voting period. End of June will be the final day of the election. So you're going to start seeing a lot of people running for CSM. You're going to start seeing a lot of people asking about, should I do this or should I not do this? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you as a current CSM member and as somebody who's written the book on how to get elected. Literally, I have an article I'll show it to you guys. If you're interested in running and you want to run, absolutely, by all means, please go out there and do it. The CSM needs good people to get on there. It needs people that care about the game, that play the game, that are willing to put the work in. So if you're interested, absolutely do it. If you're in the Imperium, we hope that you will vote the way the state tells you. If you're outside the Imperium, you hope you'll vote for our candidates anyway. We've already seen a number of pretty significant names throwing their hat into the race this time. Obviously, our dear friend, Ron USMC is running. Rick Javix has announced that he's running. Extra Squishy's announced that he's running. We have a number of people that are pretty famous or infamous that are running for CSM. And because it's my show, I'll throw my hat in the ring again for CSM 16. So you guys will have you still have Brisk to kick around. So consider this to be my official announcement of my re-election campaign. The website's been updated. I got a new logo. I swapped out my Nurgle for my Dead Widow. So we have some fun stuff, and there's some platform things on the website too. So if you want to go check that out, you can look at briskforcsm.win. Otherwise, if you're interested, keep an eye on the CSM candidates section on the Evo forums. That's where you get the official posts from people that are announcing that they're running. Mine will be up as soon as I write it, and we'll go from there. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say CSM-wise. We got two very important guests here, so we're going to kick it right into our top story, which is the long road ahead with CCP Rattati and CCP Swift.
I am very excited to be here. This is kind of like the first time, not my first time on the show, but it's been my first time in like 4 years. Bruce was telling me.
I did the math. I did the math.
The last time I was space relevant was in 2017.
The last time that our dear friend Elise, now CCP Swift, and I'm going to keep doing this, and I told him, I said beginning of the show, I'm going to call you by the wrong name every single time, so you just got to deal with it. The last time that he was on the Meta Show was July 22nd, 2017. And he was on here with Chocolate Rain, and you guys were talking about the AT Alliance tournament stuff, and that's the last that but you've been on a bunch of times in your previous capacity, so it's good to have you back, Elise. And we have CCP Rattati. This is your first time on the show. I'm very excited that you're here because you are the man behind almost everything that we care about that's happening in EVE right now, so it's great to have you here. So thanks, guys.
Yep, happy to be here.
All right, so I think the easiest first thing that we can go into, and I think a lot of folks are going to wonder, what is the director of product? What does that do? And you were in charge of the ecosystem team until I believe January, and then you got promoted to director of product. Can you talk a little bit about what that job entails, what you are working on, and then what we know folks can ask you about, so we're not asking you stuff that you have no idea about?
Yeah, basically I head up the discipline of product management, and we basically have 3 pillars of development. You have your creatives at the top. You have your product people who kind of translate vision into something that can be executed, and then you have production, basically your producer layer to get shit done. And after the reorg or shuffle, let's say, in January, we basically went into this trifecta, and then we all report to the EP, the 3 of us. So CCP Berger is the creative director. He's kind of the futurist, the creative guy, the cinematic art film director type of guy. He has the vision, and he exposes things that I need to solve. Like, if there's an idea, how do we solve it? Is there tech? Is there design? And can we incrementally get there over time? Like, how do we take smaller steps because we can't jump 5 years into the future? How do we get there, but still not, and I like, not stirring the pot. I don't want to do features that are just kind of moving pieces around. I want everything to actually, take us one step further. So a lot of the design kind of refactoring foundations we've been doing the last 2 years have been basically coming from that, because we didn't have the tools we wanted, and now we do. We have more tools, we have more control of what we are, kind of our destiny. Then we have our CCP Shreddy, production director, basically head of production, and he takes the wheel once we've set the course. So Berger and I, we talk a lot, and I basically translate. A lot of my work is analytics, talking to CSM, looking at data, and looking and talking to the teams. There's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit, but there's also just a lot of product discovery that I have to go through. I meet most of my teams on a bi-weekly schedule, where we just go through everything that is new. Sometimes it's crazy, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's doable. And my favorite part is when I get 2-3 different ideas from different parts of the company and able to kind of meld them into something that's kind of more than just the sum of the 1 + 1 is 3. That's my favorite. So that's what I do.
I have a quick follow-up on that, which is off script. But I realized, I'm a simple creature. I've never worked in software development or anything like that. And since we're asking you about being the director of product, and you mentioned product discovery being a part of that, if you're not involved in this and you have, if you could explain in terms that maybe I could understand, what is product discovery? Like, what is that?
So our product is, the sum of all the features in the game and the community. And it's really going through, from a player perspective, my experiences and my kind of needs based on the expectations that we build from the brand material, like what is EVE, like you have your brand pillars. It's a sandbox, single shard, crazy dangerous, super hard. Those are the pillars. And then you come into the game and it's a sci-fi game and you have your expectations. Okay, I expect spaceships, laser weapons, stuff like that. So, and gradually understand more about the game. So we go through the game and we've been doing a lot of kind of bottoms up research on just all of the features in the game, trying to estimate, evaluate which one is really good, which one has bad UX, is amazing, but not enough people play it, et cetera, et cetera. So we go through that, and you can imagine, Eve is like 90 apps together. It's like an ecosystem of all kinds of features. You can imagine each of these is a product on their own. And sometimes we underserve people that we'd like to, or players that we like to. We know that we want to build more economy. We know we want to build more kind of tools for people to do. And it kind of, I would say, add value, add something into the game. And there's a lot of people who can't. There's a lot of people who come into the game hoping for exploration, or kind of that's the key word. You have your sci-fi fantasy, and we don't necessarily meet that. So I'm trying to make sure that we meet our players' expectations, and it kind of go above and beyond. So that's what we do all day.
Got it.
Okay. I think I get it. So product discovery is sort of like a deep dive marketing research sort of work, or I don't know if it counts as marketing, or it's like a research workflow of trying to identify what the players want. Is that fair?
You could say player research is a big part of it. It's not, it used to be not that much. Like the industry itself. There's been a lot of advance in the software industry about these kind of way more user research, understand your player way more, not just build the game that you want to play. So that's the, I would say, 20-year-old design philosophy. You make the game that you want to make, and you kind of trust that other people will like it. But now we have to understand way more about the customer. And interestingly, we sent out the survey that people have been seeing. That's a part of it. So it's
so the survey is part of the product discovery process.
Yes.
Is that like a standard sort of toolkit for this sort of thing?
Surveys, we've been using surveys for years. I look at the quarterly survey, like it's one of the big info points that we use for our kind of guidance and strategic direction.
Okay. Sorry to take us in a different direction. I just realized that I had no idea what product discovery actually was.
And no, but that's good, because if you didn't know, then the audience doesn't know either. So it's good.
I mean, when somebody says product discovery, I'm like, how does my water bottle work? I don't know. We had some softballs we were going to throw Elise's way. We didn't necessarily mean to immediately just start interrogating Rattati and going down the rabbit hole. So I'm gonna lump some of these softballs together, and Elise. I'm sorry, I should say CCP Swift. I gotta get used to it.
It's so hard. I'm telling you, it's so hard.
That's part of the process here. Is one of the things that we would like to know is, you're a longtime player. You're sort of like in many ways, like the formerly Pappy PL side, PanFam side version of me in a lot of ways. What was it like going from that perspective? What was it like going internal, working for CCP? And what were some of the things that surprised you once you actually started getting in there?
That's high praise, by the way. I don't think I ever got anywhere close, even in my prime, to Matani levels. But I'll take it. I'll put that feather in my cap.
There you go. Yeah.
For the last few years in Eve, for work stuff and other commitments, I was like, I can't play Eve the way I want to play Eve. So I gotta pass the reins on to the next big guy in line, headliner for Pandemic Legion. So I've been kind of just floating around, doing not too much Eve-wise. That gave me a lot of opportunity to become a little bit more irrelevant. Obviously, I'm on Talking in Stations, or rather I was on Talking in Stations every week for the Sunday show, trying to remain as impartial as I could. Obviously, that's very hard to do, but I was never like the Pappy guy or the main PL guy in the room. I wasn't in that tightly knit upper level of the cool kids club anymore. So I was just kind of like an onlooker with some funny insights. So the transition for me was actually pretty easy. The hardest part, oddly enough, has been not being able to log in for a few months. I think it started in late. It's been like 3 weeks or so. So I've got another just over 2 months to go. Rather,
You're in space quarantine.
yeah, I'm in space quarantine because that's part of the CCP policy for high level players that transition into CCP from Eve. Previously it was no, just like you can't use your old characters. They're put on ice. I think you'll probably remember the best example is Celine from Mercenary Coalition way back in the day. We're talking like 10 plus years ago when he was a developer for CCP. Like his characters got put on ice. A few other notable players have made that transition. But
Rise had the same problem.
Yeah, Rise had the same problem. Fozzie had the same problem. They all had to start fresh.
So surprises. What surprised you? Now you're in the company. You're looking around.
You're on the inside.
You're now CCP Swift. Tell us something that surprised you. Like, and make it interesting. Don't tell me that like, oh wow, whatever they used.
The bathrooms were so much bigger than I expected.
Yeah, like come on. What was the neat thing coming from the perspective of like deep into the pool, metagame, politics, nullsec stuff, mover and shaker, commentator. Now you're on the inside. What surprised you?
So I'm still not like fully there yet, right? I'm still in Florida right now. I still haven't quite moved to Reykjavik yet. That comes in probably 2 months or so, just because of Department of Labor and stuff like that. Trying to transition and move during quarantine, not the easiest thing to do. But what surprised me the most, and this is going to sound like canned BS, or like, oh, Elise he's at it again. But like how much people actually care about Eve, right? Like you have these certain perceptions on the outside of CCP, what they do. You're like, well, they're a business, they've got like managers and people they have to report to and all this stuff. There are Slack channels where people just talk about Eve all day. Like, oh, this guy's doing something. So-and-so in the community is talking about this. Hey, let's take a peek at this. There's a lot more passion than even I thought, right? And you and I had the luxury of kind of seeing how the sausage was made a little bit during CSM, and Brisk can kind of attest to this as well because he's current CSM. So you think you have an idea, but you really don't necessarily have like the full picture. And I'm still getting that picture, right? I message people about Eve stuff at like 7 p.m. my time, which is 11 p.m. In Reykjavik, and they just pop up and say, "Oh, this is how it works," right? And I'm not talking about someone that's like at my level or like kind of entry level, like where I am. I'm talking about like senior producers. I had Hilmar the other day in a meeting saying, "Hey, Peter, you're getting a little bit too excited. Just calm down a little bit," right? Those types of interactions you don't generally think of when you talk about a company like that.
I think you're missing our favorite part, the art feed channel.
Yes, that was actually pretty great.
Ooh, that was one of the funnest bits about being on the. Elise remembers this from the CSM 6 adventures, as I was banging on about getting to see the models and the redesigns and pushing to get the rookie ships.
Concept art, VFX, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's good stuff. The art department, being able to see like the really awesome new like hull redesigns. Maybe somebody will eventually work on unfucking the bellicose and rapier hulls so that it doesn't look like a toothpick.
I'll put that on my list for next CSM. I have one last softball question.
Just asking for ships to fix, so.
There you go.
Yeah, bellicose hull. There you go.
Before we move on, there is one more thing. There is like an internal CCP wiki. That's essentially just like the forums that they use to communicate, or that we use to communicate. That's going to take a while. First thing I did, they're like, okay, you have access to it now. Set up your profile. I was like, yeah, bullshit. I like put in my name instantly. The first thing I did, put in my name to see if there was like any hits there, and it's like nothing. Like no one cares. Like this guy did this meeting once, or this guy's set up to do a presentation, or like some comments I had made in the community, but like nothing cool and juicy. So that was so far the only big letdown I've had, is that no one was like talking about it.
It's like you get elected president, you want to know what's in Area 51, and they tell you it's just an army base. It's nothing crazy.
It's so boring. Oh, shit.
All right, well, my last softball, and then we're going to start hitting you guys with tough questions. So for Elise, Mittens and I are lawyers. You're a lawyer. What would make a lawyer want to stop being a lawyer and suddenly become a game developer?
I don't know. So Eve has been a game I've been playing for 15 years now. When I first started playing, I was like, I'm not like these guys. I'm just like playing this because it's cool and hardcore. And then I kind of quit, got back to it, quit again, got back into it. Then I got into it real hard. And I went to my first player meet, which was like a PL meet with Seamus, Shadu, Gobbins, and a few other people in DC. I was like, just a short train ride for me. I was like, you know what, screw it. I want to see this Shadu guy in person because he's always yelling at me. Gobbins, I got to see Gobbins in person to see like what this guy's like in real life. So I was like, I'm gonna do it. It was at a Dave & Buster's of all places.
Nice.
Because we let
because of course it was.
Yeah, right. We let some guy in PL who was like just a random guy. His name is Ality, and he was like, "Oh, you're coming to DC? I've got the coolest place for you guys." And we're like, "Sweet, it's gonna be somewhere in DuPont Circle. It's gonna be nice." He's like, "No, it's Dave & Buster's." And we're like, "Oh shit!" So there's like 20 of us sitting in Dave & Buster's, and it's
Dr. Dramo's, the Asylum. Like, there's so many great places that we've had good meetings. Like legendary parties up and down Adams Morgan. Like, oh wow!
I've spent many an hour, million hours before it shut down, and Adams Morgan and all that stuff. So
yeah.
So here I am. I'm like 22 years old, talking to these people, just like it's nothing, right? Just everything falls away instantly. The awkwardness is gone. You're talking to these people and you're like, hey, these are the people I talk to like every day. It's the same talking to them in person. We have a ton of shit in common. Like we all, there's a group of us talking about the men's basketball, like it was March Madness. So we're talking about our brackets. We're talking like fantasy football stuff that was coming up. And just everything was just so easy and seamless. And after that, I was like, shit, I guess these are kind of my people, right? At the time,
tribe is life.
Yeah, at the time I was still in law school, so I was like, you know what, I'm committed to this law school thing. Let's just see it out. I finished law school. I'm like, wow, I really don't want to work, right? I did my internship after the second and third year. I was like, oh, this is weird.
Lawyering sucks, dude. I mean, I am delighted. Every it's like a 12-step program, at least in my perspective. Every day I don't practice law is a good day. Like I keep my DC bar membership active because it's nice to stay licensed if and when. But man, yeah, like the DC lawyer, the East Coast lawyer, big law scene, I mean, Brisk, you're not stuck in a big ass law firm. Like you're doing specialist lobbying stuff, which is, I think, far more interesting and entertaining than just the corporate law factories. But we're here to talk to you guys about EVE Online. So I'm going to stop us getting super distracted about this.
We're done with this stuff. So
let's stop pitching softballs and ask about probably missing asteroids. Are we going to do the missing
asteroids
the first thing?
Absolutely. So, all right. So CCP Swift.
Yeah, this is my first official.
Don't fuck it up.
I already did it, so I can't screw it up again.
There you go. we have been seeing multiple times all over the week. Everybody's complaining that suddenly on Tuesday, with very little fanfare but a lot of consternation, all of the asteroid belts that did not have any ore in them suddenly disappeared, and that left a number of regions completely denuded of asteroid belts, meaning you couldn't officer rat. And it was very hard to raise ADMs, and it was very hard to do any kind of just general ratting in a lot of regions. That we have not heard, at least we have not seen a very obvious official response from the company about that. Can you tell us what's happening with those asteroid belts and if we're going to see them coming back?
By the way, denuded, great lawyer word, by the way. But yeah, so this was actually the first piece of communication I got to put out. It was a ton of fun to do. It's on the EVE Online forums. If you look for CCP Swift, I'll throw a link somewhere in there. But essentially, it's just a tiny line item, right? Removed empty asteroid belts that have no asteroids left available. Part of the ecosystem rebalance, as you guys are well aware, going back to last year, it changed some of the asteroids, the ores that you can find in certain areas of space. That led to a bunch of asteroid fields having nothing in them. And this actually caused quite a bit of confusion to people. Obviously, the people that were on the up and up, they knew exactly what to expect. But there are a ton of people that would warp to these things and they'd be empty. And then they'd have this feeling of, well, shit, there's a beacon here. There's supposed to be something here. Did I miss out? Did I screw up? Is this system broken? Let me go to Google. They're like, oh, there's this document from 2006 that says every second downtime on the Tuesday or like the third Tuesday of the month, they start respawning. So I'll try and come back to them. And so just these things start to compound over and over again. So the ecosystem team were saying, okay, you know what? We're getting so much, confusion from these things. They're serving no purpose. Let's just go ahead and remove them. And in so doing, some regions were very adversely affected, like Curse. Curse, all of their asteroid fields have absolutely nothing in them, right? So like every system has nothing in it. So for the region of Curse, they ended up losing all of their asteroid belts. As this happened, the team saw this. They're like, okay, well, the asteroid belt NPCs, which are like some of the oldest mechanics in the game, they're like, okay, well, these things aren't going to spawn anymore. We have to find a new spot for them to start roaming. And they immediately went to it to try and find new ways to do it, new places to put them. And that's kind of where we are right now. They've gotten to a point where they have like one or two alternatives that they're kind of working with, trying to see which is the most feasible, which they like the most. And then they're going to put them out there. And I'll make sure it goes by the CSM as well to make sure that you guys
Thank you.
Can see about it, right? I know a lot of the Herf Blurf was like, oh, how come the CSM didn't know about this? The CCP hates us, right? The relationship between the CSM and CCP is like incredibly valuable, but there are certain things that like drop down on the list for right or for wrong, that drop down on the list that kind of like, it seems like it's outside the purview or like outside the importance. Like we want the big level ideas to the CSM. We want to talk about these new structures that are coming out, new things about the industry that's coming out. When the BBCs didn't all get seated at once, we want to make sure to work on that. So this was just like this little line item that didn't quite make it to the CSM, and but obviously, obviously will in the future.
I'm kind of confused here because I've been busy with war stuff, right? So like what's happening in the asteroid belts are just sort of not in my simple, again, like you guys have seen if you've watched the show, when we start talking about industry and mining, my eyes glaze over. I have to get a little blanky and sort of cuddle up here. So are these, just to clarify here, are these belts that are like completely empty? Is that because the players are mining them or because of like the NPCs mining them, or what? Why are these belts empty? How long have they been completely empty? Right, like we removed these empty belts. How long have they been bupkis?
They've been empty since December, I think. I think December of 2020 is when they've been like completely gone.
Completely empty since December of 2020.
Yeah, and it's
they
not
had
that
rats
NPCs
that spawned, but
in.
no mine, nothing to mine.
Yeah.
And is that as a consequence from the rebalance in October or something or other? Like when what happened?
Exactly. Yeah. When the rebalance happened of where ore kind of goes naturally in EVE Online, when those changes were made, these systems had like certain true secs where they never got like the ABCs anyways. So just the belts were just completely gone. It's not that the NPCs came in and mined it or that someone like was activating it too much. I can imagine there was not a lot of mining.
I can explain a bit, I think, from like a simpler story. So we have two ways to spawn minerals into the game: through anomalies, which is newer, and belts, which is very, very, very like the original like entry point of minerals. The belts need to be respawned every 24 hours during downtime because they're very, very old tech. Anomalies don't. They can be evergreen in that sense. The long-term tech decision is obviously to remove the belts slowly but surely. And we have been removing stuff from them in anticipation to actually just remove them from the universe and replace them with anomalies that would basically behave in a similar way. So that's a tech decision. The actual thing is that there have been hundreds of people working on EVE in the last years. And what you need to do to create an NPC to spawn, you need to pick a place to spawn. And there has not been a singular kind of the right way to spawn things. So sometimes NPCs respond to like a literal asteroid or a part of the belt or somewhere in the vicinity, but you always have to pick like an ID, like a thing to spawn on. And that was not supposed to be in that way. was supposed to be more generalized, but in some cases, in these belts and some of these NPCs, they were just hard coded to a point they weren't supposed to hard code in. So this would never have been like on a CSM discussion. Like this is just a defect in that sense. So we're trying to roll this back, like not roll this back, sorry, not using the wrong word, trying to go in the right direction and fix it in the right way.
And I think we understand. I think the concern from, at least from the CSM's perspective, from the player base, and you guys know this, is everything in the game is interconnected in a variety of ways. And if we don't, and there's things we're going to pick up on that other people might not. So it's always something you got to be.
It seems good to me.
about.
If the belts have been completely empty since December for whatever reason, then they should not be there, right? If the stuff isn't there, it shouldn't be confusing the players. I think that maybe this was just a wake up call for people. They didn't realize that the belts were functionally empty until they saw that they were not on the roster anymore. I had a question here: are these related to where officer mods come from? Like are the rats that spawn there in these things? Okay,
for sure. Yeah, we did this, like the same thing happened with ice belts and sodios. So the miners went to a fixed point in the universe, and then that like had a consequence and another consequence, so that didn't happen.
Correct. So is it safe to say that you guys are working on it and we'll get a solution to this hopefully in the near future? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Tuvon's going to come back. I know a lot of people were worried about it because some areas of space were affected more. Like if you go to Delve.
Where's Tobias? Where did he go?
If you go to Delve or Vino, or Fountain, like all those belts are more or less fine. But if you go to the galactic, like southwest, Providence, Ketch, Curse is a big one, right? Because that's where Tobias really does show up. That's kind of where the big pain point is for people hunting those officers. But yeah, they'll be coming back to space. That playstyle won't be adversely affected. We're going to also be looking at like the spawn rates of them. The spawn rates are also already like incredibly low. Very few people actually see these guys. That's why I've never seen one in
space in 16 years. So
yeah, I got Cormac on a gate once when I was in like 2007, but I haven't seen one since. But yeah, we'll be keeping a look at how they spawn, how they get found, how they get killed, the loot that they drop to make sure it's kind of like in line with how it was before. So that playstyle doesn't get like chopped off at the knees in any way.
So is this like something that you guys are tracking? So like, I don't know how the tracking of any of this stuff works. I don't know if you guys have a system, and this is an easy question, softball, or whether I'm actually like touching the third rail here. But like, if officer mods are suddenly becoming much more scarce because these belts have been deleted temporarily when they come back in some other form or whatever, are you guys like tracking this? Because I'm trying to apply this to like metagame impact, right? Like suddenly there's a supply crunch for certain officer mods, which particularly matters for Titans and super capitals and stuff like that. So I'm like wondering, are you monitoring stuff like that when you do take something like this out? And are you like, do you have like a daily tracker where you're looking at how the officer mods, like the officer price index, or could you talk a little bit about how you guys manage these transitions from removing the belts, removing the spawns into whatever is presumably the next phase?
It's very clear. So we don't monitor these on daily basis, only in kind of relation to a potential change. So now that we are looking at it, because they weren't supposed to be removed, we go and find the right loot tables and the right NPCs, look at the data and make sure that we kind of reintroduce the same drop rates. So this is all through loot tables and dashboards. So easy to find, but I don't look at the officer mod, trading velocity every day. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
Not surprising. All right, so I want to take it back a little bit. The other major announcement that has happened in the last 2 weeks, I actually should say probably in the last 3 weeks, has been the announcement of all of the changes to industry. And I wanted to just get a general idea from Rattati. What's the overall goal? What do you guys want to see from industry now that you've made all of these changes to how a lot of the different structures and stuff are built and the cost and things like that? What's the goal, and how are we going to know when we've hit that goal?
So the industry changes themselves, the blueprint changes, they were meant, oh, I'm sorry, wrong button. The industry changes are a part of the refactoring of, the resource flow through manufacturing into the eventual like other parts of the game. So we started as a source. So in between we have the blueprints, and we wanted to achieve a couple of design and product goals with the changes. We wanted to create a more intuitive progression, kind of a step-by-step progression for industry, so that there is an actual kind of transition point at the battleship level. Like a lot of our designs revolve around anchoring the battleship. Like it's the subcap to capital transition. So a lot of focus is there. The intended price of battleships in the long term was supposed to be anchored at the same level it was before the changes. So everything else was supposed to kind of pivot around that. Subcaps were supposed to be cheaper for new players, and we wanted to add controls to capital and super capital manufacturing. I'm not gonna like criticize the past, but I want to be able to control the value and a number of ships, not in a direct manner, but be able to influence at least each individual capital. Like balancing it through T1 just harmed new players as well as veterans, so we did not have any control. So this is like the main point of it. New player progression, not harm new players, anchor on battleships, and introduce economic controls or industry controls.
How do you think that's going so far? Have you seen any progress since, I mean, I know it's very early, but is anything moving in the direction you guys think it needs to go?
I think everything is, like, from an economic standpoint, it is getting better, for sure. It's hard at the moment for income, but we can see that people or players are finding new venues for making income. We're obviously seeing people moving from bounties into incursions and into wormhole, sleeper loot, and we're just monitoring it. It's very interesting to see how kind of crafty our players are and what the level of bounty rewards needs to be kind of attractive enough for a big part of the players to stick around doing that. So we're monitoring, and there's a lot of, I would say, fun from an economic standpoint learnings.
Okay, I got a follow-up on that, which is sort of related to, I'm essentially going to be asking the stupid questions because I'm perfectly happy to be publicly stupid. And so kind of like the what are you guys looking at when it comes to, the officer mods and things like that, and all these discussions of the economy, and is it headed in a direction that you guys like, right? Like, are we headed in the right direction, in the wrong direction, whatever? Players don't necessarily know what CCP is looking at, and that's probably like for some of it, that's probably a good thing. But like, obviously you want to keep your cards close to your chest about any big surprises that are coming down the line. But where I'm going with this is, where should we as players, in a way where it's like safe to look? What sort of like what are like what's the GDP equivalent? What are the leading economic indicators? Are there parts of like the MER that you guys are pointing at and going, hey, like this number is going up and this is good? Can you just explain to us what are you guys focusing on that we can also take a look at to see the progress or lack thereof, instead of just, throwing shit at each other on Reddit or something or other, if that makes any sense?
Mm-hmm. I would say that our ultimate goal is to distribute players around the universe. Like, we don't want people to aggregate too much. And a big outlier 2 years ago was Null's economies. Like, obviously, like bounties were spiking like insanely through super carrier ratting, etc. So we, like, many of the changes we did weren't necessarily economic in that sense. We just wanted to reduce the super umbrella effect so they couldn't rat in peace, reduce the EHP on super carriers, so it was harder to do. We've seen that those kind of activities went down, but unhealthy is usually like spiky in some way. And you can see the Forge is very spiky. Like, I'll admit that it's not like, it shouldn't be like a universe like that. Like, Eve shouldn't be like everything's manufactured so close to the market. We talk about it often. It's like you have your manufacturing plant in Manhattan. Like, that's just not the way it works. So in the real world. So anything like that, like an aggregation or conglomeration of activities, we don't like. We want to spread people out. So that's why the DBS system was invented or added. So you would actually have to move a bit around. Same thing with reserve banks or the banks themselves, the ESS, to get more people into nullsec in a different fashion, kind of add more risk to those activities. But it's clear that there's an opportunity now to take further steps with bounties in nullsec anomalies or combat sites. So we can see that we'd like to, or at least I often have to talk to psych a couple of times before I get to add more into the universe. There's incentive to there's an appetite to kind of get people more back into nullsec.
Is that, am I hearing the slight possible leading edge of an end to the scarcity era in that answer?
Sure.
Excellent.
I got to follow up on that, actually. So one of the things I want to drill down on here from a 4X perspective, right? If we're playing Civilization, if we're playing Stellaris, right? Are you familiar with the whole wide versus tall concept in like 4X games? Rattati?
Not in those words, just...
Okay, yeah, no. I mean, this is... so, in like Civilization or in Master of Orion or Galactic Empire, Galactic Civilizations or Stellaris, the two main ways of doing empires are considered to be like wide versus tall. And I'm going to use the Imperium as an example here. So we had what was called a wide empire before it got burned down in like 2016 thereabouts, where we controlled the Galactic Northwest. Legacy, before they started losing their home regions, could also be described as having a wide empire when you have a whole bunch of different regions. And one of the things that we did after learning about the administrative challenges of owning an entire galactic quadrant was when we rebuilt the Imperium, we went for what's called a tall empire, which is essentially a vertically integrated system, right? Like one of the challenges that people worldwide are having with the whole COVID unpleasantness is it turns out that having a vertically integrated supply chain where you can do local manufacturing and everything might not be the most efficient thing, but strategically speaking, it's very valuable in times of crisis. So one of the questions I have about the goal here is if you're talking about player distribution through nullsec as a positive in state, right? The idea of wanting people to be more widely distributed is essentially, are you guys trying to take away the option of a tall playstyle? Because in these strategy games, people, like the big divider in most of these big grand strategy games is, and I know that EVE is not a grand strategy game, right? I mean, I think it is the way I play EVE is if it's Stellaris with real people, but in most of these strategy games, it's wide versus tall and then mega tall, and there's all these, sort of phrases for that. So that's what I was trying to figure out here. Is your vision of EVE, like, let's say that our people in the Imperium want to basically not expand too far past our floodplains, and we want to stay concentrated in one region. That's a social choice. Is that something that you would prefer us to not do ideally? Do you want us to be like widely spread? What's the goal if you have people that that they choose density, they choose to live in Manhattan, as it were, instead of Montana?
We definitely want to allow the choice, and but the choice was too easy, or it was too easy to be self-sufficient 2 years ago, because you could farm all the T1 you wanted and build anything and all the Titans. That's fair. That's very clear. So what we want is, if you pick vertically integrated, it's either you have supply chains that you have your high sec corp or low sec corp, and you make sure that that's completely like all in your domain. You can't do that. It's going to be just logistics. Another path that we're really interested in is more customization of space. So with choice, you can build the empire that you want, but you cannot necessarily make anything or do anything you want. You have to make a meaningful choice. So that's our answer to that. So that's going to be through, in the future, not that far. We've been talking about this quite some time, is customizing your space through iHubs. So if you want Noxium in nullsec, then like an iHub upgrade and the choice of a mining anomaly would be the way to go. If you don't care and just want to build battleships, you go deep on Tritanium or whatever you want. So do you want to build a mining? Do you want to build up your ADM or your basically, do you want to defend or attack or those kinds of things? That should be through customization and choice, not, just be able to get anything you want in your own. So that's the long and short.
We've talked a lot about stuff that's happened and things that they exist now. One of the things we did want to do was try to talk about stuff that's coming forward, forward-looking things. And I think I was trying to tease out a little bit of the end of the scarcity thing from you with my previous question, but let me go into that in a little more detail. What can we expect? And I know, obviously, let me back up for a second. One of the big complaints that all the players have, and they had for a while, is we don't get to see roadmaps anymore. We understand why you guys don't do that. But for the player base, it's still hard because we want to know where we're going. So can you talk a little bit about what you expect to see in the game through the rest of 2021, what we can expect to see in Quadrant 3 and 4?
I can't give a quadrant date because these are moving targets, but the redistribution will happen, the end of redistribution as a phase, because there's going to be changes in balance just like anything else, will be through new mineral content. So we'll add new mineral faucets that don't exist in the game today. And through those, we'll have the controls through dynamic systems and kind of better tools to actually kind of see where there's scarcity, where there's like not enough of like a simple, let's take ice. Like we would monitor the input of all the asteroids and anomalies. And then we tactically add some like distributions, just like, I would say like Triglavian combat sites. Like we have a system called Tails that kind of listens to player actions, and we're able to kind of, this happened, now we can add more. This hasn't happened yet, so we don't need to add it anymore. So that's the vision we're going to. We don't really want to be always on the dials ourselves. We want the system to self-regulate. So if you overfarm, you suffer. If you're smart about it, you don't.
Okay.
That's a good step. So what essentially what I'm hearing now is where there's another round of mineral redistribution we can expect from the rest of the year. Scarcity at this point will be over, and you're going to start adding stuff back in. There's going to be new mineral sinks faucets, or mineral faucets that are going to be added. They're going to be opened up a little bit. So I think that's a good thing. That gives folks hope. That's what we're hoping that we will see is finally some of the stuff opening up a little bit. Mm-hmm. Is that a fair characterization? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, it's absolutely fair. I just can't say whether it's in 2021 or early 2022. I can't say to that, speak to that. We have more ambitious goals than just to spawn combat, mining anomalies into the game. It's a step above that. So
what kind of goals are those? Can you talk a little bit about those?
It's just that we've under-delivered on experience in some of these, and we'd like to kind of add more, I would say, a deeper mining experience when we add this. And I mentioned the role of the Rorqual. We want to make the Rorqual have a kind of unique role in the universe, not just like the thing that mines the most. So we have been kind of going through a long period of trying to figure out that role. How does it work? How do we control it? How it's still kind of the aspirational goal for industrial ships.
Is that an imminent thing, something we should expect to see soon, or is that just a longer term?
It's a bit longer, but not that long.
I have this is potentially a topic shift. I'm not sure whether it is or not. It's vaguely. I'm just trying to go back to here's the fact pattern. Changes are happening. Scarcity stuff is happening. Maybe changes are going to come in the future that reduces the scarcity impact or whatever. It seems to me that a lot of the controversy that we've been discussing on the show so far, or at least trying to clarify that regarding the asteroid thing, is could be solved potentially by a simple question and answer thing. If somebody goes, hey, I warped to the belt there isn't a belt there anymore. Where did the belts go? Where are my officer spawns? Is there like an easy, obvious answer? Because, you know, a lot of these people, they have nothing to do with nullsec. Like we're talking about things. I mean, Curse is obviously NPC nullsec, but Providence, but you know, these guys aren't involved in the great game. They're not involved in the big Game of Thrones and space shit that we do. Somebody goes to an asteroid belt, somebody's hunting officers, they're not there. What for those players that aren't part of the nullsec stuff, that aren't like roll call miners, that aren't part of like the kind of like let's try to balance things and spread those out, what should those guys be doing instead? Right, you're a Pravi guy, you're a dude in Curse, you go and the belts aren't there. What is the direction that CCP is suggesting for those players that have been impacted by scarcity but aren't part of like the great empires? What should those guys be doing? You mentioned incursions earlier. Is that like a sign of success to see people doing more incursion? I just don't know what counts as good or bad here. They go there, belts empty. Where do you want those guys to go?
So just the lack of the belts was unforeseen. So there is no plan other than that to replace their like game style back into the game as fast as possible. So that wasn't they weren't a casualty of nullsec in that sense. Some of the belts were moved. The ore from the belts was just moved because we wanted to have more a geographical distribution of minerals. That was the original, like one of the original steps was to just say that some minerals exist in high sec, some in low, some in wormholes, some in null. So that was the first step. That removed ore from a lot of belts, and since many have been emptier for longer than since December, many have been empty since December. The fact that the NPC spawn is tied to the belts has nothing to do with our vision or moving forward with scarcity or nullsec.
In terms of like what players kind of to go after, like what players should do, I don't think we have like a plan on what players should do, but I can tell you what players are doing, right? Especially when it comes to scarcity. If you don't have a huge social group to fall back on or a huge wallet to fall back on, I kind of have always viewed it as a nerf on like the institutional knowledge of how to make money in EVE, right? So like the old tricks that worked from 2006 to 2015 don't necessarily work anymore, right? So the vast amounts of experience that some of these old groups had, they could kind of like hold over some newer players. That's the playing field's getting a little bit more even in terms of what they've been doing. I've seen a lot of people, especially with the new industry stuff, people have been going out for these gas clouds. Gas huffing is like the new hotness. People are going after reactions because they know reactions are going to be necessary for building battleships. They're starting that out. People are
There's new content in relic site combat sites. No,
yeah, the ghost
not
sites.
Those. Yeah.
I've seen people going out for ghost sites, kind of getting more.
All of the new super capital components and capital components will be seeded through new content or existing content that was not used enough. So it wasn't exciting to run. So a big part of this was to redistribute, underused content, add some value to it, add some value to minerals or items that were coming from those. So that's why Planetary Interaction, for example, we've like increased the importance of that. We've increased the importance of gas and the increased importance of these 12 or 18 brand new components that everyone now needs. So these are all new ways to make money.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
And I have seen, so EVE has always, for as long as I've played, EVE has always rewarded the people that are very conniving and very good at figuring things out and min-maxing things. So watching like new struggles for people has been quite interesting, just from an anthropological standpoint for me. People watching. So watching what these guys get up to, there's like small little wars brewing in over customs offices, just because that's where the PI comes from and people want to get like tax on it. So there are like these little bands forming over there. Obviously, not like a cool like big story where 15,000 people are fighting all together in this one spot, but it's still like an interesting option for a lot of players.
That is actually we just I didn't realize the time, right? We've actually
we
hit
may go a little longer because I have a couple more questions I want to knock out.
All right. Well, Brisk, back at you. Well, you know, I just in case they have to go, I really want to thank these guys for coming on. I know that there's a lot of stuff happening, and we would like to keep you here for a very long time. We will keep you as long as you're willing to answer questions. I guess Brisk has got I just got
a couple more of the forward-looking ones, and I think.
All right, a couple more. Yeah, we did a lot of past-looking things.
We'll try to knock it out. We'll try to knock it out.
No rush. Everything. The only thing that's going to happen is my wife is impatient to see the last episode of Ozark season 3.
Oh, there. All right. Okay. Well, we don't want to get you too much
5-10 minutes
Viagra.
Tops. Exactly.
Yeah,
all right,
half an hour, I guess.
The one question that I had, and I think you can see the chat is getting a little fired up. People are getting angry, but that's how they always are. So it's okay.
If they're not angry and we're doing a bad meta show, it's the meta
exactly.
show.
If they're not mad at something, then we're not doing our jobs right. What I did want to open up, and this is a very open-ended question, but when you look at EVE right now, you look around the game and you see things. What do you think needs the most work? What's the one or two areas that you look at and you're like, this, we have to do something about this at some point soon? What would you say to that? Either of you. Well, I'd like to hear Rattati first, and then Elise.
To me, I think we push out so many new players because of our over complexity in the beginning. There's just so many low-hanging fruit that just piss me off personally, and just create frustration and kind of almost like panic quits. You're like, holy shit, this is like just too broken. This is too ununderstandable. So we all know that the learning cliff. So that's why we've kind of a big new strategy for 2021, and you're aware, is that to focus on the new player experience. But by personally, like, the market, the industry, like these could all be so much better. It could be so much better to like navigate for new players. It's just the interface itself, like the overview, all of that stuff. So if I could, I would fix like all of those things, like make a really nice, clean interface, all those things. But from a gameplay perspective, I think if I could fix anything and make it the way that I really want it to be, would be most of these things that I'm trying to get done anyway. So like our passions, like, we're going the same way. I hope that we're trying to like anticipate at least a lot of the players' needs. But to me, faction warfare should just be like an empire tug of war that's always fighting. They're always doing something. I would love, in some point, to see, and this is a shared vision between me and Berger, is to have like, if you play 4X games and you have you're playing against 4 empires, I would love to have faction warfare be like that. You are just looking at and like working against or with some of these NPC empires. They have their identity. They have different leaders that have different, specific goals, different strategies, and you participate in that. And I think that would be an awesome stepping stone from high sec, static, more missions, learn the game, get into the new one, like into the next step, low sec, empires are fighting. You see awesome fleet fights done by NPCs. They mine their own ships, they build their own ships, and you help them by killing the empire, not through plexing, like an artificial game. And then they learn the basics to get into Sov, and that would behave very similarly. Like, to me, that's a natural progression that I would love to see.
All right.
So
Yeah,
if you have what would you say?
Idea. There's a reason I'm in the community department instead of the game design department. I'm sure. I love stories. Like, I'm a stories guy when it comes to EVE. I just want to see how people interact with each other, things like that. So I'm sure all the fixes I'd put in, all the changes I'd put in would completely break everything. But luckily, I'm over here on this side of the fence, so I just get to talk to you guys and communicate some stuff to the teams and kind of relay some information and pain points and things like that. So I'm going to take the cop-out answer.
I would expect nothing less from a fellow lawyer, so it's okay. My last question, and this is a more in the weeds thing, but I promised some folks that I would ask it. we got the teaser about cloaky camping in the last dev blog. Do we have any more information about that we can put out there for the players, or is there something happening soon that we can talk about, or is it still on the drawing board?
So nothing's changed materially since we went through the designs with the CSM. The third or fourth iteration was a paradigm shift in how we approach the problem, like not necessarily attacking AFK cloaking specifically, but trying to add more play counterplay into the Intel ecosystem, as I call it. So I believe we have two major systematic or foundational systems. We have Intel and we have logistics or travel. So sinos, all that stuff. And I call them ecosystems, but that's probably confusing. So I would like Intel to be more play counterplay, and I'd like logistics or travel to be way more play counterplay. So that's why we are investing in the deployable strategy to put things in space and kind of get out of this, I would say, binary nature of a lot of these systems. When you put tools into players' hands, something like new things will that we didn't necessarily anticipate will happen, but that's where we want to go. And that's where Intel is also going. We'd love to have more tools than just local to kind of have proper Intel gameplay. I'm a huge fan of Eve is a submarine game ultimately, and I'd like to add way more submarine-like Intel gameplay, pinging, turning off the engines, deep diving, landing on those.
Crazy
sounds cool.
Tools
Yeah,
they all exist. We should have them. Evasion and kind of detection. Those would be awesome. Logistics wise, I would love for people to be able to build up more travel networks. You have your Ansiplex system in your home, but I'd love to build up a different kind of way to travel rather than the jump freighter to low into high, kind of more, I would say more let players build their own railroads, out of nullsec, see what happens. And the sign of deployable was the first one of that, and cloaking will be in that theme, I would say.
Well, if you want to do a quick way to tweak the Intel game, I'm just going to use the opportunity to throw out a suggestion, going completely off script. But one thing would be to remove TCU and iHub timers from being part of the ESI or API or whatever, such that if people want to participate in SOV gameplay back in the day before Dominion, before FozzySOV, we would actually have to have a recon department go out there and say, hey, this iHub got reinforced. Hey, this TCU, hey, there's SBUs up, right? And the way it's worked for years now, which I think has been a huge negative impact for the spies and for the recon guys both, because they need work to do. They gotta engage with something, and I think it's ridiculous that I have no business knowing what's happening about an iHub timer in the drone regions on the other side of the galaxy when I haven't sent any of my people. Nobody's put any man hours, and it's free intel. It's free intel. If you guys could just flick a switch and turn that shit off, such that everybody's got to actually do work to see when a SOV contest is happening. Because one of the reasons why people blob up so much these days, you want to cut down on population density and stuff. The fact that it's possible for us to know what's happening on the other side of the galaxy without any work makes it very easy for everybody who's bored on any given Tuesday or whatever to say, all right, well, there's a timer over here and we're all going to go over there. And that's one of the reasons why you do see smaller entities get crushed out of these regions like Vale of the Silent or whatever, because hey, we can do, hey, we're bored on a whatever night, let's go over there and smash some sandcastles.
Absolutely.
But unsolicited advice, I've been hammering on that. That's not a new thing. That's always been one of my bang the drums. I think that people should have to work to get SOV related intel.
And we get that a lot. I mean, I will say this: the ESI is a great boon for a lot of things, but man, it provides so much intel.
Fog of War. Let's have some Fog of War. We had Fog of War for most of EVE Online's history. I think it's something that's really missed out on. All right, well, Brisk, I'm
done. That was my last real question, I think.
All right, I want to thank these guys for coming here and taking questions and being chill, and hopefully we didn't bite too hard, or if we did, you liked it. Thank you all for coming. And yeah, we will hopefully do this again. We can't promise when we can actually get CCP guests on the show, but we are happy to do this whenever is reasonable. And that's all I got.
There we go.
Risk.
Rattati, Swift, you guys have anything less to say you'd like to say on the way out the door?
Just when we talk about submarine gameplay, all I think of is Asher pulling a crazy Ivan somehow, and that's what I want to see.
He's totally going to do it. He'll do it.
Other than that,
Absolutely.
thanks for having us. It's been wild being here, and hopefully I'll be here again many
Absolutely.
times.
You're always
back.
welcome.
We appreciate getting you back. Rattati?
I would say there's 2 or 3 things. The CSM is important, so definitely go out and vote and represent if you want to be on the CSM. There's a lot of, like, I would say every time someone's talk about running for CSM, there's like a negative vibe. They don't do anything. No one listens. There's like, it couldn't be farther from the truth. I talk to these guys literally all the time. They can vouch for that. And we're going through now. And I think that there was a request to talk about a little bit about the future and kind of the future of rapid releases and balance changes, and that's in no way, shape or form going away. That's all just on the docket and is always on the docket. Having collecting, like we did a year in review with the CSM for 2020. Supposed to
4
be
hours worth.
Yeah, supposed to be 1 meeting, ended up in 4 meetings. It's still been fun. There are low-hanging fruit there to fix or take a look at. And Pochvin, for example, we have the reserve bank keys. They're coming out, like that's for sure. New content, and yeah, all of those things are identified through conversations with the CSM, and a lot of it goes directly into balance sheets or rapid release. So it's super valuable, and it's also super fun and good for me. It's Excellent. Really important to have the player voices. We have user research, we have player research, we have surveys, but nothing beats just talking to people.
Well, and we appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us. And I definitely appreciate all the time that you've come and talked to CSM. You've been one of the most approachable of all the game developers. We've seen you more than anybody, at least in the last couple of months. So I definitely appreciate that. All right, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. This has been the Meta Show for April 17th, 2021. I'm Bruce Ball, joined by the Matani. Thank you to CCP Rattati and CCP Swift. I called you by the right name this time. For joining us. We will see you next week for the Meta Show, and you stay classy, Nudie.